Okay, do we have microphones? All right, so we're going to do a few introductions. We're just going to go right down the list. If you girls and guy, yep, could talk about what school you went to or still go to, and what your degree is, and where you're from. Miss Jaiden, you want to start? Yep, just flip it on.
Can they hear me?
Yep.
Okay, my name is Jaiden Moreland. I am from Texas Tech University. I'm a senior. I'm studying agriculture communications, and I am originally from Texas, born and raised. My whole family's from Texas, multiple generations. I'm a 7th generation cattle rancher. What else is I supposed to answer?
Your ag or your degree. Did you already
I
say
answered that, yeah.
I think you're good.
Okay.
All right. Miss Nicole? Nicole Pfrang from Kansas. You're good.
My name is Nicole Pfrang. A lot of you might have heard. My dad is the one that likes to talk about the beef checkoff. I graduated from K-State University in 2018. My major was animal science option in production management. I'm a 5th generation cattle farmer, cow calf all the way to feeder. I live in Kansas, and I've been an RCAF member since it was formed, I guess.
For a minute, you sure have. Your family has been. We're very appreciative to the Franks.
Hi everyone, I'm Marisol Tarango and I'm from Central Florida. My mom's family is from Central Florida and my dad's from the Southwest. I just graduated from Moreland University this spring, and I've been doing member spotlights and writing articles over the summer for RCAF USA. And if you are from regions 1, 4, 5, or 11, come to me. I'm in the mercantile. I would love to talk to you.
George Wishon, run cattle all over eastern Washington, it seems like. With my folks for a cow-calf operation. I went to college in Blue Mountain Community, Pendleton, Oregon, graduated with an AAS in livestock production and also in crop production. I'm on the board of directors for Region 1, which is the Northwest. So there's my basic introduction.
Oh, dadgum. There we go. We're going to just stay with you down there. The first question is, what are your feelings toward the NCBA narrative on our college campuses? And have you witnessed bias towards this narrative? How do we deal with these biases?
Starting off, well, as we all know, the NCBA and the checkoff are more or less kind of tied together. The first thing I'd say with the bias is checkoff funding to different educational studies and promotion materials, just because, well, they have a lot of money to spend there. And so they can kind of, well, more or less buy science and buy, thoughts. I'd say there is a bias. Some colleges, universities are a lot more than others. Some are less. And some are just kind of in the middle. I think it's something that if you're wanting to go into the cattle industry, I'd take a look at it, kind of feel out what the institution professors are, kind of feelings towards some different hot button issues, and don't feel bad if you always go to the same one that's kind of an old standby in the area. And so that's kind of how I deal with it, is just like any other business, kind of choose where to go. The other thing that we at RCAF are trying to do is get our message out, education and some of the main topics, country of origin labeling, along with protecting a spot market in the fat cattle, and fighting the checkoff. I think social media has been a really big tool. Trying to get to a younger crowd. Instagram has really helped off. That was, something that we got started, and I was really glad of that. And so that's kind of how I'd say you can deal with it. I'm sure there's probably some other comments.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned Instagram. George has been on me for a year. Tatum, get an Instagram. We need an Instagram. And so our sweet Miss Jaiden, this summer when we hired her, she's an ag com student there in Texas. And talk about this summer, Jaiden, what you have done in terms of our social media. And then has there been a bias in terms of the NCBA narrative? I know you've worked in a couple of those Texas organizations. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Over the course of this summer, I traveled around. I launched a social media campaign called Blazing the Trail, and it was telling the story of the American rancher. And so I traveled around to different members and their ranches, and I wrote stories, took pictures, did videos, just wanted to get to know them and tell their story. And so I've been helping Tatum run Facebook, and I started the Instagram, and kind of just been doing all other things she needs me to do. So
Basically anything Brett Kinsey asks her
Yeah.
to do, that's basically what.
But as for the bias on campuses, if y'all have never been to West Texas, there's a lot of cows in West Texas, and Hereford is actually the beef capital of the world. There's a lot of packing houses, a lot of feedlots. Texas Tech is actually located like about 2 hours from there, and so we get a lot of kids that are very heavily influenced from just the NCBA narrative. But in classes itself, so as an ag communications major, we do a lot of case studies because we obviously have to learn to communicate for a variety of different topics that are going on in the industry and how to just positively communicate them and accurately communicate them. And so we've done case studies on antibiotics, organics, all sorts of stuff, but what's interesting is we've never done a case study on MCOOL or the checkoff or anything really that RCAF stands for, actually, which is very disappointing because we're supposed to be, having communicators for the ag industry, but they're not talking about things like that. And so, but also just like for my classmates, there's a bias because in Texas, you're raised to trust the Texas Cattle Raisers Association. They're a very powerful group that have a lot of influence over the whole state. And so I actually worked for them my freshman year, and so I got to witness some of that my freshman year. It was an interesting time. But so in my classes, a lot of these kids don't know any different because we've been raised to believe that everything the cattle raisers say should be what we believe because they're supposed to be fighting for us, when in reality, that's not what's going on. So RCAF has really opened my eyes, and when I go back on Monday, actually, I will be bringing up things like that.
Isn't that interesting? I've really enjoyed getting to know perspectives, Jaiden, and George said earlier that next year we need to have a Snapchat filter for convention. So be ready. We're launching a Snapchat filter for convention next year. Are you excited about that, Jim Dinklage? I can tell you're excited about the Snapchat filter. So next question. How does generational status play into the ideology and practices in the ranching industry as a younger generation? So we're gonna have Marisol and George answer these questions, and I'll have you know these young people actually came up with these questions and have worked on them together. So these are their questions of things they wanted to talk about. So Marisol, do you want to start? How does generational status play into the ideology and practices in the ranching industry as a younger generation?
Okay. I think that when you come from a long generation of ranchers, and even if you're not directly, maybe it skipped a few generations, but you're steeped in that culture, you just think how your grandparents think, and that's not wrong. I was raised the same way my parents were raised, and I was raised to believe what they were raised to believe, and there's nothing wrong with believing what your ancestors believed, and most of the time it's right. But what happens with tradition is we accept it as tradition and we try to preserve our tradition, and we miss the purpose of what the tradition really means. For example, in Florida, in the old days, right after the Civil War, they rode what they called McClellan saddles, and it was a military style saddle, but it had down the middle of the saddle was a split, and the general who designed it designed it that way to make it more comfortable. So all the cowboys in Florida rode that McClellan saddle because that was the only saddle that they could get their hands on. So another thing that they used to do was their boots, they called them brogans. It was a brand, but then they just generally called it brogans. And they wore those lace-up boots because that's all they had. So nowadays, no one rides McClellan saddles anymore because in the 30s, we had ticks come in and deer flies, and they had to go to roping, and they had to modify their saddles or buy Western saddles because they had to rope their cattle to put the medicine on. So we lost that, but we lost the tradition of McClellan saddles, but we lost it because our tradition and our main goal was to improvise and to keep producing cattle. Another thing with the Brogan shoes is that the people would unlace them and use their spur to strap it, so it became like a slip-on boot and you wouldn't get hung up if you fell off your horse. So sometimes boys nowadays, and girls I guess, they'll wear Brogan shoes, but they'll have them laced up and their spurs on them, and they're trying to be like their great granddaddies, but they're missing the point. So we can't let preserving history and traditions, we lose sight. When we just focus on the things, we lose sight of the actual legacy, which is innovation and moving forward and holding our morals and philosophies.
Great answer. George Wishon, why don't you answer that? I know. Talk a little bit about, you have an incredibly rich generational story there in Washington State. Talk about that generational status and how it's played into how you ranch.
Oh, there's a lot of generational there. I'm 5th generation, but financially speaking, I'm 2nd generation rancher. And I've been an RCAF member since 2000.
How old are you?
22. So
That's our youngest board member. How cool is that?
yeah, I mean, the generational status and ideology and bias, you can see it both ways. But the ranching industry is so largely surrounded by both the matters of family and community. I mean, we all go to a county cattlemen's meeting, monthly, and talk to all the old boys there, and there's a lot of ideology there, a lot of discussion on what the industry is, and trying to either break away from that or change it can be pretty tough. But you got to do what you got to do to stay in the industry, and when it comes right down to it, being profitable is more or less the main key of being sustainable. And so it's tough, but changing how you do things is also tough. And so there's a lot of the generational ideology that the old boys pass on down to the next generation, whether it be a family reunion or a local coffee shop or whatever. And so you got to respect it at the same time, but you also got to be able to kind of go out and figure out your own facts and discern your own truth at the end of the day also. So that's kind of my statement on it.
Perfect. Miss Nicole, let's go to you. What struggles have you faced as a young rancher? I'll also mention Nicole is a board member for KCA, which is the Kansas Cattlemen's Association, not to be confused with the KLA, which is the NCBA affiliate in Kansas. So, Nicole, what struggles have you faced as a young rancher now that you've moved back to the ranch and are working with your parents?
The struggles I kind of seen more is, I think, what Greg, you might be seeing also is the uncertainty of our livelihood, how the cattle prices are down. We sold a load of cattle at $1.03, which that's not too bad. But when the fire at the Tyson plant, right when that happened, we're getting ready to sell, and it was $1.18. And we ended up selling our cattle for 99 cents. So it's the uncertainty and knowing that the only way to help it is to help get our message out, which also kind of runs into the media standpoint, is where you're seeing all these environmentalists and all these left people. They're saying cattle are killing the environment, and us cattle people, we're the coldest people here. We don't care. We're keep raising cattle. We don't care. Well, back in 2018, we had the hardest winter that I could think of, and we lost calves left and right. It wasn't how many calves we had. It got to the point where how many calves are dead. So when they're picturing that, we're trying to keep ourselves together when we're seeing calves die. And yes, it's our income, but I think a lot of you are thinking like me, would go out there at 5 o'clock in the morning to check on the heifers, to check on the cows, then go feed, and you're out there till 11 o'clock at night unrolling hay to bed them down, which they end up having the calf 50 feet from the hay onto the snow for some odd reason. And we're human. We have a heart. We care about our livestock. We're not doing the cattle part because it's, I'm a fifth generation. That's the only thing I know. I'm going to help take over the family farm because I love doing it. I love seeing the calves running across the pasture. I love doing it. And we need to find a way to get that out.
Tell our story.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We do need to tell our story, and that's one of the reasons I, of course, the last 4 years have been so excited about social media. Jaiden, this next question is going to go to you. Speaking about social media, the question is, what are ways to engage younger generations in the issues we face in our industry?
Obviously, the younger generation, social media is everything. My little sister is on social media all the time, like all the time. They see everything, they like everything, they share everything, they're on there. And we have about 18,000 followers on Facebook right now, and we have a few hundred on Instagram. We're working on growing the Instagram, but that just shows you how far of a reach we can get. And a lot of the people on our Facebook are not producers, they're consumers. And so we're reaching a whole new group of people because of social media. And we're trying to now, because consumers, they want to know what's going on. Like today, actually, we had a consumer start commenting on our stuff, wanting more information. And I haven't had a chance to respond yet, but I think Karina Jones was actually responding and engaging with the consumer. And so people, as they find out about this, they're wanting to know more information. They're upset that they don't know where their beef comes from. And so with social media, we're able to engage them in a new level that just communicating with them face to face, we might not have been able to reach before. So this summer, I've been really trying to work on kind of giving more relatable stories and putting a face behind the beef production and the cattle production that these people, some of them think meat comes from the grocery store still, and we won't hold anything against them. They don't know any better. But the people love stories, and they love to see cool stories and cool things, and they like to hear about you and your story and who is producing their meat. And so it's been really fun to get to try new things and to engage people and see what works. And we get to see all the analytics on our Facebook. And we have seen that videos and photos are just reaching thousands and thousands of people, something that we may have not been able to accomplish before.
So to tag off of that, we have set up, and I know I talked about this yesterday, but if you've seen that very cool backdrop back there that says usabeef.com, is it .com? usabeef.com, just had a momentary lapse there. We have set that up, dadgummit, is it .org, usabeef.
Is it Demand USA?
No. It's our site that connects our consumers. .org. Dadgum. That's a real bad time to forget that website. usabeef.org. And we set that up, the RCAF staff several months ago during COVID, to connect producers with consumers. And so we have that set up. Thank you so much, Fort Pierre Livestock, for sponsoring that booth. Their iPad is there. Jaiden is sitting there to get you signed up for that petition that we talked about. Steve Stratford and Brian Hansen, there's a whole committee of guys that got that petition ready to go. Please stop by that booth and do two things for us. Sign that petition, Jaiden will help you. Don't be nervous about the iPad. And the other thing, Jaiden, is videos. We want to be able to do videos, and a couple videos. A video about, we need your thoughts. The analytics, you have told me, when you post your videos, people engage with that. They love that.
So we have videos, when you look at the analytics, we reach an average of 10,000 people every time we post a video. When you post a photo, you get about 5,000. So we're really going to try and start pushing a lot of video and coming up with new creative ideas to engage people with different videos and different information, I guess.
So if you could stop by that booth, Jaiden will be sitting there. She has her camera there. Do a video, 30 seconds, doesn't have to be long. But we want to have 100 videos done by the end of tonight, to where over the next few months, we can just pepper these videos throughout, and we can remind everybody else across the country, hey, go sign that petition. Remember, go sign that petition, as well as, why RCAF? Anything to just engage people. Talk about the checkoff. Talk about, why you like RCAF, whatever. Please stop back there and do a video with us, because they're very important. I will end with Marisol and Jaiden, your experience with RCAF. And let me just say, these gals we didn't advertise these internships. They just sent us their resumes, which is pretty cool in the time in which we're living, that these girls are self-starters enough to just take a chance and say, hey, I want to come work with you. Marisol, what has your experience been like this summer?
Hello? Okay. Well, I was talking to Mr. Bill actually earlier today, and I said I was usually the odd one out in college with my ideas and what I thought. And now I'm in a group with all the odd ones out. So that's pretty much been my experience.
Yes, that's awesome. That's awesome. Miss Jaiden, how's your experience been?
It's been awesome. I have loved every minute of it. I'm not ready to go back to school. I don't want it to be over, but I have loved getting to meet. I've met some of you out there. I know I've met the Hutchisons. I had so much fun with them, and I just loved getting to meet all of you, and I've loved getting to meet y'all here, and it's just been awesome. I loved it. I have opened my eyes, and now I'm super passionate about the stuff RCAF stands for, when I didn't know really until I got to RCAF. So, yeah.
Awesome. Please give a big round of applause to our panel.